packed Seoul subway, people rushing through a station, a taxi stuck in traffic, someone holding an empty coffee cup looking around for a trash can, a huge subway station with multiple exits, a restaurant with a break time sign, local maps versus Google Maps. If you're new here, my name is Sean and this is Korea Properly. I show Korea beyond the media. If you're coming to Korea for the first time, there are a few things I'll strongly recommend you do not do. And I'm not talking about obvious tourist mistakes. I'm talking about things that can actually waste your time, make your day unnecessarily stressful, or completely mess up an otherwise good Seoul itinerary. I lived in Korea for most of my life, and I've also helped a lot of foreign visitors plan their trips here. So there are 8 things I'd avoid if I were visiting Seoul for the first time. And number 1 can literally ruin an entire morning or evening. Number 1, don't travel across Seoul during rush hour. Let's start with probably the biggest one. Do not try to travel across Seoul during rush hour, especially roughly between 7 to 8 a.m. in the morning, and again during the evening commute between 6 and 7 p.m. And here's the mistake I see people make. They think, the subway is crowded, so I'll just take a taxi. No, that's not necessarily better. You're just moving the traffic jam from underground to the road. During rush hour, millions of people are moving through the city. The subway can be packed. The buses can be packed, and the roads can be slow enough that your taxi barely feels like it's moving. So if you're staying in Myeongdong and you want to go all the way to Gangnam at 6:30 p.m., don't assume that because Google Maps says it's only a few miles away, it will be a quick trip. And if you're traveling with luggage, children, or older family members, this becomes even more important. Here's what I recommend instead. Stay local during rush hour. If you're already in Myeongdong, explore Myeongdong. If you're in Seongsu, stay around Seongsu. Have dinner, get coffee, go shopping, then move across the city after the rush is over. In Seoul, sometimes the best way to save time is simply not to travel. Number 2, don't buy takeout without knowing where you will throw it away. Here's a surprisingly strange thing for first-time visitors to Seoul. Don't buy a takeout drink assuming you'll easily find a trash can later. You might walk out of a cafe with your coffee, finish it 10 minutes later, and then start looking around. Where's the trash can? Where's the trash can? And you may discover that public trash cans on the street can be surprisingly difficult to find. This doesn't mean Seoul is dirty. Actually, it's often the opposite. But Korea's waste disposal system is structured differently from what many visitors are used to, and public trash cans aren't necessarily sitting on every street corner. So here's my rule. Before you buy takeout, think about where you're going to finish it or where you're going to dispose of it. If I'm going somewhere where I know I'll be able to throw it away, great. But if I'm about to walk around for an hour, I'd rather just sit in the cafe and finish it there. And there's another thing you should know. You may not be allowed to board a city bus with an open takeout drink. It's not because you're a foreigner. The same rule applies to everyone, including Koreans. So if you're carrying a half-finished coffee, don't assume you can just hop on the bus and take it with you. This is why I wouldn't buy a takeout drink unless I already know where I'm going to finish it or dispose of it. Takeout doesn't always mean take it everywhere. Number 3, don't plan Seoul by distance. This might be one of the biggest itinerary mistakes I always see. Don't plan Seoul by distance alone. A lot of people look at a map and think, oh, that's only 5 miles away, or those 2 places are pretty close. But you're not traveling from point A to point B. You're traveling from your hotel to the subway entrance, down into the station, finding the right platform, possibly transferring, finding the right exit, and then walking again once you're above the ground. And some Seoul subway stations are enormous. So a route that looks simple on a map can feel very different in real life. For example, you might have Gyeongbokgung in the morning, then Seongsu all the way for lunch, then Gangnam in the afternoon, then Hongdae for dinner. Technically, sure, possible, but should you do it? Probably not. When I plan a Seoul itinerary, I don't just look at distance. I look at time, geography, transportation, opening hours, crowd patterns, and what makes sense to combine all together. And that's a very different way of planning a city. Don't confuse possible with pleasant. That's one of the biggest rules I use when planning trips for people. Number 4, don't arrive in Korea relying only on Google Maps. Here's another one. Don't come to Korea relying entirely on Google Maps. I'm not saying you can't use Google Maps. I'm saying don't make it your only navigation tool. For many travelers, Google Maps is the app they use for everything at home. So they naturally assume, I'll just use Google Maps in Korea as well. But navigation in Korea can work differently from what you're used to. For local businesses, Korean addresses, walking routes, subway access, and smaller neighborhood destinations, I strongly recommend having a Korean navigation app ready. Naver Map or Kakao Map. Here's something I would do before you even arrive. Download it, set it up. Make sure you can search for places. And if you're going somewhere important, especially a restaurant, hotel, or a specific cafe, save it ahead of time. Because the last thing you want is to arrive in a neighborhood and suddenly discover, wait, where exactly is this place? Especially when the destination is inside a building, download an alley, underground, or on a particular floor. Number 5, don't choose your subway exit randomly. And speaking of navigation, don't randomly choose a subway exit. This sounds like a tiny thing until you experience it though. In Seoul, the exit number can make a surprisingly big difference. You can get off at the correct subway station or walk through the wrong exit and suddenly you are standing on the opposite side of a giant intersection. Or you can come out of the correct exit and find yourself almost directly in front of your destination. Same station, same train, completely different experience. So when your navigation app tells you to use exit 3, don't think, whatever, I'll just use nearby exit 1. No. There's usually a reason. Number 6. Don't show up at a popular restaurant without checking. Here's one that can completely ruin your lunch. Don't assume a restaurant is open just because you found it online. Especially if it is a small, popular local restaurant, you might arrive at 2:30 p.m. and discover break time. Or maybe they're closed on that particular day. Or the last order was already taken. Or they're sold out. And this is particularly frustrating when you travel across Seoul specifically to eat there. So before making a restaurant the centerpiece of your day, check a few things. Is it open today? Does it have a break time? What's the last order? Does it take reservations? And if it's somewhere extremely popular, check whether there is usually a wait. Because there's a huge difference between we are going to this neighborhood and we'll find something to eat. And we're traveling 45 minutes across Seoul specifically for this restaurant. The second one requires a little more planning. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I always recommend building the restaurant into your route, not building the entire day around one restaurant unless it's really worth it. Number 7, don't get into a vehicle without knowing what you're paying. Most taxis in Seoul are perfectly normal and straightforward, but there's one thing I would strongly avoid as a visitor. Don't get into a vehicle if you don't know what you're going to pay, especially around airports or major tourist areas like Myeongdong. You may encounter different types of vehicles and services. If it's not using a normal meter or it's a different kind of vehicle such as a call van, make sure you understand the pricing before you get in. And honestly, the easiest way to avoid a lot of this uncertainty is to use a ride-hailing app. Uber does work in Korea as well, so if you already have Uber on your phone, you can use it. But in Seoul, I personally recommend Kakao T, which is a local ride-hailing app. Most taxi taxis use it, so you'll generally have a much easier time finding and calling a taxi through Kakao T. You can also enter your destination directly in the app, so you don't have to worry about explaining a complicated Korean addresses to the driver. And if you're taking a regular taxi, you can make your life even easier by putting the destination into your navigation app and showing the driver the Korean name or address. You don't need to give a 5-minute explanation in English. Just show them where you're going. And remember the first rule. If it is rush hour, a taxi isn't a magic escape from traffic. Lastly, number 8. Don't try to see everything in one day. I think this is the biggest mistake of all. Don't try to see everything. I see this constantly. Someone comes to me with a Korea itinerary and says, Day 1, 경복궁, 북촌, 명동, 성수, 강남, and Hongdae. And I'm thinking, why? Technically, you might be able to touch all of those places in one day. But that's not the same as actually experiencing them. You are going to spend your day walking, finding subway entrances, waiting, transferring, checking your phone, looking for restaurants, and rushing to the next place. And suddenly, you're back at your hotel, exhausted, without really enjoying any of the places you travel all the way to Korea to see. Seoul rewards a slower approach. Pick a neighborhood, understand what belongs together, visit 2 or 3 meaningful places, have a good meal, sit down for a coffee, wander a little, and leave yourself some room for the unexpected, because some of the best moments in Korea aren't the things you schedule at 10:30 a.m. They are the things you discover because you weren't running to your next reservation. Possible is not the same as enjoyable, right? So those are 8 things I would avoid on your first trip to Korea. And you'll notice that most of them have something in common. They're not really about knowing more places. They're about understanding how Seoul works, when to move, where to move, how long things actually take, which neighborhood belong together, and which little details can turn a great day into a frustrating one. Because a good Korea itinerary isn't about squeezing as much as possible into every single day. It's about making the right things fit together. And that's exactly what I try to do when I create custom Korea itineraries for travelers. If you're planning a trip to Korea and want an itinerary built around your interests, your pace, your hotel locations, and the way you actually like to travel, I'll leave the information about my custom Korea planning service below. And if you're coming to Korea soon, now you know what not to do. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.